When you hear the term wardrobe malfunction in regards to professional wrestling, you usually think of a superstar's attire not exactly going to plan, usually leaving them exposed accidentally. But not always, because on occasion, WWE have used them intentionally. And that's something I want to talk about and explore in today's video. Before we get into that though, if you are new here, make sure to go down below, drop a like and subscribe. I post multiple wrestling videos every single week to keep you entertained. But with that being said, let's get into the video. So to start things off, I want to talk about bra and panties matches. I absolutely hate that word, by the way. Now, these were a staple of the Attitude Era, at a time where WWE really liked to push the boundaries and see how much they could get away with. It was at this time they realised sex sells even in professional wrestling. And this was how we saw the introduction of bra and panties matches, where the intention and the goal of the match was to strip your opponent down to their underwear, their bra and panties. I really hate that word. Now, I know what you're thinking. This was surely just a match for lower card women, you know, people to get them on screen and get a bit of attention. No, this was for every woman on the card. The top stars of the Attitude Era competed in these matches, where the goal was to be exposed down to your underwear. Usually extremely revealing underwear. We're talking wrestlers like Trish Stratus and Lita, both competed in multiple bra and panties matches. And I think this was kind of WWE's introduction into realising that they do have a very large male audience that want to see what these female wrestlers look like under the gear. Because WWE would have had all the retention information, which, if you don't know, is how long people are watching and how engaged they are with the content that they're seeing. And they will have known how many people were basically having their eyes glued to the screen during these matches. And if these matches weren't successful, they wouldn't have kept doing them. Now, as we left the Attitude Era and WWE went into a more PG program, we seen bra and panties matches phased out completely. And I think regardless of your opinion on them, I think they were definitely there for a time, and it's not something that would fly in the modern generation with professional wrestling. The thing is though, we're talking about the Attitude Era. We are talking about something over 20 years ago, even before I was born, if you can believe that. But even recently, this hasn't stopped WWE from using female talent sex appeal to engage fans and using what I like to call the intentional wardrobe malfunction. One such example is just about 10 years ago now, and it was on the August 9th, 2016 episode of SmackDown Live. Now, Eva Marie was scheduled to face Becky Lynch in a one-on-one match, and Eva's gimmick at the time was to try and get out of matches in any way possible. And one such way that she did this on this episode of SmackDown was through a planned wardrobe malfunction. Now, before the bell would ring to start the match with Becky Lynch, we would see Eva Marie's top come undone, nearly exposing her top half. Now, Eva Marie has spoken about this in interviews since and said, like, there was no chance anyone was seeing anything. It was very well done, very well protected. And like I say, it was part of her gimmick, really. Now, the interesting thing to me is this clip on YouTube has over 47 million views. Look, that's genuinely obscene to me. 47 million. Less people have seen my videos, but you can change that. Share this with a friend. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is a one-time thing. This was 10 years ago, but this isn't even the most recent example of WWE doing this. On the January 14th, 2019 episode of Monday Night Raw, Alexa Bliss would be involved in a segment where an intern would walk in on her getting changed. In the segment, you would see an intern knock on Alexa Bliss's door, who would not respond to the knocks. He would then decide to walk in, where we would see his reaction to seeing a topless Alexa Bliss. As the camera would pan to Bliss, we would see Alexa Bliss with her bare back on show, with a top covering her chest. Now, unlike the Eva Marie situation where you can say, oh, okay, well, it was part of her gimmick, it was a clever way for her to get out of a match, this segment was like out the blue. Like, this had nothing to really do with what was going on with Alexa at the time. This was when she was hosting her show on Raw, What a Moment of Bliss, the famous one that got EC3 absolutely buried by Dean Ambrose. So this segment at the time, before her show, with her being walked in on topless, like, it wasn't relevant. I remember the reaction at the time being like, this was a bit weird. And this clip itself has over 14 million views during a time in WWE where ratings were at effectively an all-time low. 2019 was a dark time for WWE, and I even said myself on multiple occasions, 2019 was the year that made me stop watching professional wrestling. So to say that this clip has over 14 million views during that time is a bit mental. But now I want to give you my opinion on WWE using things like female sex appeal to engage audiences and the use of intentional wardrobe malfunctions. Now, I'm just going to start this off by saying that I think wardrobe malfunctions in WWE and professional wrestling as a whole have been fetishized massively. I don't think it's crazy to say that there is an audience out there that get off on female wrestlers being unfortunately exposed in the ring. And I don't think it would have took a genius inside of WWE to figure out that with having a predominantly male audience, which they do, that a large portion of that audience are going to want to see what these female women's wrestlers look like underneath the attire. Now, what we have to talk about with a certain demographic of male wrestling fans is that they're creeps. Look, this isn't new information. I'm not saying every male wrestling fan is a creep, but there are some out there. We know this. This isn't new information. And I think the problem that I kind of have is that with WWE leaning into this fetish of wardrobe malfunctions and using them intentionally, you almost enable that creepy behavior because you feed to that audience. Look, you took your top female stars and put them in, let's just say, sexually vulnerable situations where creeps online can do indecent things with it. Now, I'm not going to say that these women weren't consenting, because obviously they absolutely were. But that's not to say that WWE should have done it, should have leaned into it, because personally, I don't think they should have. I can understand why, and when you look at the views that these videos specifically have garnered, the reason's there. But like I said, when we talk about creeps in professional wrestling being a problem, when you create content directed directly towards them creeps, you're giving them power, you're enabling them. And I think when we talk about, you know, these stars of professional wrestling, I don't want to say Eva Marie's the exception to what I'm going to talk about now, no offense to her, but like Lita and Trish Stratus were the greatest women's wrestlers in the early 2000s. Them women could have continuously put on great matches, and at times they were stripped down to their underwear. Trish Stratus stripped down to her underwear and made to bark like a dog at one point. But like, is that not a bit demeaning? Is that not like, it wasn't needed? I think you can be edgy and you can build an edgy audience without having to rely on the sex appeal of your top stars. And even looking at the 2019 clip with Alexa Bliss, I mean, what was the need to have her in a "I usually skip this part" scene on WWE television at that time? Like, what did that do for her career? What did that do for the regular audience? Nothing. It just got WWE a viral clip with probably the audience you don't really want to go viral with anyway. And I do think you can chalk the 2019 one down to Vince McMahon going senile. I mean, the man thought it was a good idea to cover Roman Reigns in dog food. He clearly had something going on up there. But I do think now, since TKO, there has definitely been a shift in a certain respect towards women, and I think the world has gone into a better place in that regard. I think if you want to find heavily sexualized content, you can go to platforms to find that begin with www.po. I'll let you work out the rest. But you don't have to have that content on a professional wrestling show anymore. I don't think you ever did have to, but now I don't think that's ever going to be the case again, in my opinion. And we can talk about the treatment that Liv Morgan gets now as essentially a glorified valet to Dominic Mysterio. That's much better than what she would have been doing in the early 2000s. Like I said, and I think my overarching point with this is you can be edgy without having to rely on the sex appeal of your top stars. And I don't want people to think that this is me being woke or being a prude or whatever. I am not against sexualized content. I just think keep it out of wrestling. You know, wrestling, I view wrestling as a sport, sports entertainment. You wouldn't look at athletes in other sports. Like, could you imagine the women's 100 meter? Oh yeah, to win the race, you have to strip naked first. You can only cross the finish line once you've stripped naked. Like, it just wouldn't happen. And I don't think it should happen in professional wrestling. While it is story driven, and while I understand you can have sexual content in stories, I just think keep it out. That's just my opinion. Keep that separate keep it somewhere else. And I think by doing that, you then, like I said, you don't give power to the creeps, because you don't give these creeps the power to go to conventions and say to these women's wrestlers, I've seen you in your underwear, which I'm sure some of them have. As always, though, I want to know what you think. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what you agree with, what you disagree with. I think it's a really interesting topic, and I think it's something that we could discuss much more on this channel. Definitely a different style of video for me. I mean, look at me being a feminist. I'm proud one of them. And look, I even came onto this video cosplaying a masculine lesbian. No, that joke probably can't stay in. As I said earlier in the video, though, make sure to go down below, drop a like and subscribe. But with that being said, I will see you all next time.